Channel Status Theory, Episode 29. Ask almost anyone whether they care about status. Most will say no. They might say they just like nice things, that they work hard and earn the right to spend what they want, that they could not care less what people think, that keeping up with the Joneses is for insecure people, and they are definitely not insecure. Then watch what they do. Watch what they buy. Watch how they talk about where they went on vacation. Watch how they describe their job to a stranger at a party. Watch what happens when someone they consider a peer acquires something they do not have. The gap between what people say about status and what they do about it is one of the most reliable patterns in all of human behavior. And that gap is not hypocrisy. It is a rational response to a specific social problem. Social psychologists call it self-presentation, the management of how others perceive us. And one of the most consistent findings in this research is that people are deeply motivated to deny motivations that are considered socially undesirable. Status seeking is one of those motivations. In most social environments, admitting that you care about status, about being better than others, about being perceived as successful, important, or powerful, is considered in poor taste. It is the kind of thing insecure people do, shallow people who have not figured out what really matters. So, people who care about status, which is essentially everyone, develop linguistic and behavioral strategies to pursue it while maintaining a plausible denial. They frame status purchases as investments in quality. They frame competitive social behavior as simply being their authentic selves. They frame conspicuous achievement as something they did for themselves, not for the approval of others. The denial is not merely strategic. Research by Henri Tajfel and others on social identity theory shows that people genuinely believe the narratives they tell about their own motivations. The denial is partly self-deception, and self-deception is cognitively useful because it makes the performed denial more convincing. Status denial takes several recognizable forms. Once you know them, you see them everywhere. The merit reframe. I earned everything I have through hard work. This is often true, but it frames success as the product of pure effort, not social advantage, network effects, inherited capital, or luck. The merit reframe allows the status holder to claim their position without having to acknowledge that position itself was the goal. The authenticity claim. I just buy where I like. This is frequently used to avoid admitting that purchasing decisions are socially calibrated, but what people just like is heavily shaped by what signals approval in their social environment. The authenticity claim is a shortcut that closes the circuit. If I just like it, then it is not about status, so I am not someone who cares about status. The anti-status pose. Deliberately dressing down, driving a practical car, refusing fancy restaurants, all of which, in certain contexts, constitute their own form of status signaling. When a wealthy person drives a Prius or wears a plain fleece, they are often not escaping the status game. They are playing a different version of it, the version where the signal is, I am so secure, I have nothing to prove.
I have learned that these things don't matter. This is the terminal status denial. The claim that the individual has transcended the game. It often appears among people who have already won enough of the game that they can afford to appear above it. The reason status denial is so universal is that openly admitting status seeking carries a genuine social cost. Research by Berger and Ward, 2010, on signaling and consumer behavior, and related work by Nellison and Mayers, 2011, on luxury brand signaling, shows that being perceived as status-driven decreases social liking. People who openly display status-seeking behavior are judged as less trustworthy, less warm, and less likable than people who pursue the same outcomes with less visible motivation. This creates a prisoner's dilemma. Everyone is playing the status game, but the optimal strategy for each player is to appear not to be playing. The person who says, I care about status, loses. The person who says, "I don't care about status," and then pursues it anyway, wins. At least in terms of social perception. This is why elite social circles develop elaborate indirect languages for discussing status. Not, "I got this because it's expensive," but "I found this craftsman in specific location who has been doing this for 40 years. Not, "I wanted a luxury car," but "I did a lot of research, and this is the best engineered vehicle in its class." The object is the same. The framing removes the status motivation from view. The deepest layer of this dynamic, denying status, can itself become a status move. In certain elite circles, particularly among the intellectual and creative classes, ostentatious disinterest in status becomes a marker of high position. The wealthy person who reads unpretentious paperbacks and drives an old car and refuses to mention where their house is located is often performing a very specific class identity. I am so far above the status game that I am above pretending to be above it. This is Bourdieu's concept of distinction, taken to its logical end. The truly elite do not just opt out of mass status signals. They opt out of the very act of signaling, or appear to. And that apparent disinterest becomes the most exclusive signal of all, because only those who have already arrived can afford to perform such indifference. The system is almost perfectly self-sealing. Caring about status is low status, but deliberately not caring is also a status performance. And being aware that not caring is a status performance is itself a further layer of sophistication that marks one as even more culturally literate. There is no exit from the game, only different ways to play it. The person who says they do not care about status is almost never telling the whole truth. And that is not a character flaw. It is a rational response to a social environment that punishes visible status seeking while rewarding its invisible pursuit. Understanding this does not free you from the game, but it does let you see it clearly. And once you can see it clearly, you start to see it everywhere. That is exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe to Status Theory.